Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
And as usual, we're pre-taping. This time we're pre-taping Thursday before our Monday air date. And it's actually the 2nd of August. So the summer's just about gone.
It is the 2nd. Yes, it is. Amazingly.
But last week, we got news via email, because I didn't see it on a breaking news feed, that former Congressman Ron Dellums passed.
Yeah, I know. I was very surprised.
Raymond, yeah.
I was very surprised.
He's one of my longtime heroes.
Mine too. I first became aware of him in the early 70s.
So tell us a little bit about some of the highlights of his career, because in the state we're in now and where we are in this country.
Where should I start?
just give people a little sense of.
He wanted to investigate war crimes during the Vietnam War, and Congress apparently was not interested. So he held private hearings himself, and
well, yeah, I guess private would be
Well, private.
It was because the chair of his particular committee, I think, just didn't want to have the hearings.
Did not want to do it, so he
as
did
a
it
member
on
of
his
Congress,
own.
Yeah, he booked some time in some office building in Congressional building.
Right.
If my memory serves me correctly, it was probably the basement of maybe
You think
the
it was the
Rayburn?
Rayburn? Yeah.
I'm not sure.
It could be. That was they were using that for all kinds of things back then.
But he assiduously held those hearings.
He held those hearings, and one of the things that he discovered, he was told by a sergeant about the My Lai Massacre, which otherwise may have not come out. It's certainly not that early. It might come out at some other time.
So for young people, My Lai as Pinkville, as those who were in that war at the time came to remember it as, was when Lieutenant William Calley got tried and convicted for being in charge of a group of Marines, I believe.
Were they?
Maybe
that's
not.
fun. No. It was the U.S. Army. It was It was the 7th Cavalry. If I'm not mistaken,
well,
I think it was the 7th Cavalry.
It
doesn't say. No, it doesn't say. I did
okay.
read this.
Right.
But one of the things, and I'm not surprised to hear this. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but he was considered a radical. Somebody who didn't play by the rules, and there was a lot of opposition to his.
Why were you surprised now that he was considered radical then? He was a radical when he was holding hearings in the basement.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't consider him a radical. I mean, that's not radical. That's like trying to find out what's going on.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
but no, they considered him a radical in the negative sense.
Yes, you're talking about the establishment.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
But he kept getting reelected. I mean, he had an illustrious career. He was there for a long time.
Tell folks where he's from.
Well, originally from California. Now, I don't know if he was born in the Bay Area.
His father was a longshoreman on the West Coast.
His father was a longshoreman on the West Coast.
I'm guessing he was.
Yeah, but he could have been Oakland. Could have been. I'm not sure. What also amazed me that I did not know until I read the obit was that he was the mayor of Oakland. And he had to have been very young as the mayor of Oakland, because he was 32, I think, when he went to the Senate.
Okay, so he was in politics from an early age.
He was in politics from an early age, and I didn't quite see it here, but if I'm not mistaken, when he left the Senate, he went back to Oakland and got reelected mayor again, didn't he?
I don't know.
Well, let me see. I believe he did.
But my memory tells me that Ron Dellums was one of the prime movers. If not one of the original, he was one of the original founders of the Congressional Black Caucus, which still exists today.
I believe you're right. Here we are. Was a member of the Congressional Black Caucus in the early.
He was a founder, not just.
I think you're right. I think I remember that. Yeah.
The interesting thing is, over the time he had ups and downs, but at least they're still in existence and theoretically still trying to do their best efforts to make sure that the constituencies across the nation that are represented by black members of Congress their interests are looked out for, no matter what the mainstream politicians in either party think has priority. So yeah, the the fact that Ron Dellums is no longer with us is a major thing to consider, folk, because in this day and age, what we're suffering through, and we hate to start our show with the current occupant of the White House, but because of all the latest tweets and stuff about calling for Attorney General Jeff Sessions to stop the Bob Mueller investigation, quote, this witch hunt that's doing a disservice to the country. That's the guy who's in the White House. That's his claim. None, and the fact that he came out and started tweeting his opinion about what should happen in the trial of Paul Manafort, in the Virginia trial that's going on right now about his former campaign chair, a president of the United States actually publicly voicing an opinion in an ongoing trial, which is verboten anathema and just not done. It's against, because the president has a bully pulpit and can poison any jury pool, so that could be jury tampering, that could be any number of, quote, obstruction of justice and getting in the way of that trial. It could be any number of things, and that's why presidents refrain from doing that.
Publicly,
and so when he did that,
but that's his intention, isn't it?
But here's the point: the rest of the Congress, and we're coming to this from Ron Dellums being the stand-up guy who would buck the tide and hold his own hearings when he thinks war crimes have been committed by his own country. Mitch McConnell, silent about Donald Trump calling the Mueller investigation a witch hunt. Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, silent about Donald Trump voicing an opinion on an ongoing trial. The fact that these elected officials in the current Congress are so spineless and have no clue as to how to protect the democracy that they were elected to serve is why a guy like Ron Dellums' passing is just so sad for this country.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's actually an analysis as opposed to an editorial, folk. And I tend to veer off in editorials on this show at times, but for me, that's an analysis of where we are in this country. So yeah, we've segued from Ron Dellums to what's going on within the current state of this country, and yes, Paul Manafort, the former campaign manager, chair, whatever, of the Donald Trump campaign that they've been trying to distance themselves for, is on trial for various crimes, money laundering and various and sundry things. And that's just this trial. When this trial is over in Virginia, he's going to be on trial in the District of Columbia for other crimes against the United States of America.
And don't you think that at some point he's going to start singing to save himself?
You're saying that in the context of his connection to the current occupant of the White House?
Yes.
Explain further. So our audience can get a sense of what
he was the campaign manager, and I would think, unless it was kept that close to the vest, that he knew something about possible Russian collusion. He must have known that Jared Kushner and a couple of campaign representatives met with the Russians.
Well, let's step back a second about must have known. Wasn't Paul Manafort not one of the people who was in the room with the Russian lawyer, female, when they had the meeting about collecting dirt on Hillary Clinton?
Oh, yes, you're right.
Okay, so
you're absolutely correct.
I'm speaking
so
to your
more
point.
To it.
I'm speaking to your point. When you say he might know, go ahead.
No, I was going to say he possibly knows a lot more than we even think he knows, and if Mueller nails him, I mean, if he's really got him, the guy's going to sing. He's going to say something. I don't know what it is. I don't know what he knows. I don't know if it's about collusion. But if he has anything on the White House and its current occupant, he's going to spill it.
Okay, here let's.
And that's why everybody's afraid of the Mueller investigation.
Bob Mueller, basically, is trying to connect all the dots.
Right.
All right, and so So to pick up on where you're sort of heading, if Paul Manafort, who's on trial for laundering money, hiding money so he wouldn't pay taxes on income that he earned, folks, while he was consulting for the Ukraine government, which was run by the judge in the trial says, we don't want to hear the word oligarch because all that is a poison term that might prejudice our jurors. What is an oligarch? Well, Your Honor, says the prosecutor, it's a man with a lot of money who paid this man a lot of money that he tried to hide. So, well, then just say a rich Russian. This is the judge. I'm just giving you what I heard on the news while I was watching this, folks.
A rich Russian.
So you can't just say oligarch as a pejorative term. Okay. So let's just say this rich Russian who basically was a Putin lapdog puppet in Ukraine actually got run out of Ukraine by the people of Ukraine who realized he was a puppet of Vladimir Putin. So when he fled to Russia, Paul Manafort's funds dried up. All that money that he was being paid, all these millions of dollars that he was hiding as consultant and getting paid in goods and services and mansions and whatever. Right. But not income, and it was slightly hidden or wasn't so well hidden because they brought him up on charges with a number of indictments. So let's just say the Russian-Ukraine connection that Manafort is very close to and got all these $60 million from. At some point in the course of his thing, he was talking to, can I get hold of the money I owe you to this Russian guy who was paying him money if I brief you on what's going on in this Trump campaign? This was one of the offers he made. So here we have the campaign manager working for the guy in the White House, and the Russian connected to Putin, and he's talking about, well, let me brief you on what's going on in the campaign. And then coming back the other way, oh, we have dirt that we'd love to give you on, and the president, the current occupant of the White House, because I don't think he was legally elected, says, oh yeah, we'd love to get that. So they have this meeting. So the obvious connections and the possible quid pro quos are basically what Bob Mueller's investigating. But what you're saying is,
I'm saying
if there's a lot there, at some point, he's going to turn state's evidence.
I believe it's so. Anyhow, an interesting thing is this. I've been following this thing. That woman, the Russian woman who was just
phase two.
Phase two. Now she was here.
Connection. You have to dig up the woman's name.
In 2016, it was Beta, I believe. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to look it up.
Maria, spelled M-A-R-I-I-A or something.
But her last name was, I believe, B-I-D-A.
The Soviet plant that was trying to suborn connections and collaborations and cooperation via the NRA. This woman, Maria Vertrushka, whatever. Let's see. Let's call her.
That's what I'm doing. Keep talking.
Russian spy woman.
Spy female.
Basically, she too had a benefactor, another Russian oligarch, who groomed her to come over here and be his right-hand assistant in getting close to the NRA. She was so good at what she was doing, she actually got the NRA to come to Russia and help her, or she formed a gun rights group in Russia and then invited the NRA over. And so they've been playing footsies and cozy with her.
Maria Butina.
Okay. The not that good-looking redhead spy amongst us. At least she's been charged with being an agent of the Russian government. Do you have the? Hopefully, you can call up the exact indictment that they placed on her. But they arrested her before she could flee, and then they told the judge, we need to put some serious bail on her because she's a flight risk.
She's charged with spying.
Oh, just plain spying.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, according to the Guardian, says
she was
charged
as being an agent of the Russian government, trying to further the ends of the Russian government against United States interests. So you brought her up because that's another evidence of Russians trying to infect the Republican Party. And she used as her channel and conduit the NRA, the National Rifle Association, folks.
Now, in addition, today I read something about her connection with the NRA, and I read so many things today, I don't know where I read it. It was either in Washington Post or the New York Times or the Guardian, that the NRA is the financial backing of the GOP.
Well, I don't know.
And I've never heard that before.
Sole financial
I don't
backing,
think they're the
however,
sole backing, but they're.
But no, I've seen this over time. I think it was something like $21 million, if not more, got pumped into the GOP during the 2016 campaign by the NRA. And here's where the rub of that is, and Maria Butina comes in, because a lot of NRA money came from Russian sources.
Yes.
And so what the Federal Elections Commission and probably the FBI are now digging into is tracing the Russian money that went to the NRA and then trying to pin down how much of that Russian money got funneled through the NRA into election campaigns for the GOP. And if that's the case, then there are a number of violations of federal election laws and a number of other laws about foreign entities being involved in our elections, and that's all illegal, folk. People keep trying to say, oh, Rudy Giuliani's latest line is collusion is not a crime. Oh, yes. Remember, we could call up, if we were working for the old ABC News entity that we used to work for years ago, any number of videotapes. We could run during the montage. No collusion, no collusion, no collusion, no collusion. You see the orange monster that's in the White House. Every other day you would get up on television saying, no collusion, no collusion, no collusion. Last week, Rudy Giuliani came with the new party line, promptly echoed by his boss in the White House. Collusion is not a crime. The new line, the pivot. You're looking for your occupant of the White House to pivot and become more presidential. He just pivoted. No collusion to collusion's not a crime. Here's the pivot over here. Collusion's not over here. Collusion's not a crime, and that is now.
Collusion may not be, but treason is.
Well, no, forget treason because it's going to turn out to be treason. But collusion is just a fancy word that's been noised about so that the real legal term isn't put into play.
Right.
And the real legal term, folks, is conspiracy.
Conspiracy.
Guess what? Everything that the special prosecutor is digging into, he could care less about collusion. All he wants to know is who participated and who tried to cover it up and whether or not they participated successfully, but the fact that they were part of the conspiracy to make this happen is where he's going. And so, it's going to be a very interesting, it's going to be interesting to watch Rudolph Giuliani and Donald Trump with their new song, Collusion is Not a Crime, Collusion is Not a Crime, when the real dominoes start to fall, when, if indeed the president's lawyer, Michael Cohen, who is now being investigated and hasn't been charged yet.
Not yet.
But he came out with a tape about the payoffs to Playboy Playmate, and then came out with a statement through his television lawyer that, President knew about that meeting to get the dirt on Hillary, and the president's been saying, I don't know anything about that meeting. So,
but there's a tape, isn't there?
No, there's no tape.
No tape of the Hillary thing, but there's a tape about.
There's no tape about.
I thought
Donald
he recorded.
He recorded him with the Playmate payoff.
Yes, but not about the Hillary.
No, not Hillary, not the meeting.
Not the meeting, right?
The meeting. As far as we know, there's no tape about the meeting. But Michael Cohen has come out, and this has been all over the news, folks. We're not telling you something you don't know, but we're trying to connect some of these dots on how the Paul Manafort trial as much as they don't want to say in the course of their trial that this is all about conspiracy, Russian attack on the U.S. elections, but because Paul Manafort happened to have been the campaign manager for the current occupant of the White House, whose name we try not to mention just because it sticks in our craw. And I'll be perfectly blunt with you. Based on what I've seen, based on where these investigations are going, I completely believe that it will be proven that the Russians had a major role in the election, and that theoretically this guy is not really an actual officially elected president. But, you know, he's in the White House, so we have to deal with it.
He is in the White House.
And the damage that he's causing is insurmountable so far. At least it's seemingly insurmountable to me. Which brings us to something we thought we might want to segue to before we get back to hard news. Call up your story on what the psychiatrists have been saying.
Yes, there's
the
a
damage
new
to the country
disease.
Physically, legally, because the rule of law just went down the tubes with this guy. But psychologically, the damage to the country has gotten so bad that there is now a what is it?
It's called PTAD.
PTAD.
It's called President T Anxiety Disorder.
Read a little bit from that. What the therapists are saying. You folk are being bombarded so badly by such horrible things that it's really made you seriously ill, or will continue to make you ill.
Okay.
Quoting from
The Hill, which is a political blog. Therapists in the U.S. say they have seen a rise in politically related anxiety under the Trump presidency. Though a condition has not been officially named, therapists and patients have referred to it as T anxiety disorder, according to a report from Canada's CBC, which is their big television station. Elizabeth Lamott, the founder of the D.C. Counseling and Psychotherapy Center in Washington, D.C., told CBC that there is a, quote, collective anxiety, end quote, among her patients related to President Trump's rhetoric and policies. Now she goes on to say that her client list, patient list, has increased since the Trump presidency. But not only that, she's seeing patients now that she hasn't seen in 30 years. They're coming back to her.
Okay, because things
are just
lives,
things
stress
are just
has gotten so much for them. And this is since the 2016 presidential election.
Right, exactly. She goes on to say
I shouldn't laugh, folks. This is serious stuff.
No, it is. She goes on to say, and I can see this. There's a fear, quote, there is a fear of the world ending, end quote. Quote, it's very disorienting and constantly unsettling. Now, you see, the problem with that is you can say to your mind, well, don't worry about that. That's not going to happen. But your subconscious is preparing for it because you've already warned it, and your subconscious takes care of you regardless of what you do. So I think it's very plausible. I know that I've not been feeling very well lately within the past year. And my own doctor told me, he said, you know, a lot of people are coming to me saying that. He said, since President Trump, I have seen so many new patients that are complaining of uneasiness, sleeplessness, and what have you. My stomach, I've got a slight stomach problem, nothing serious, but it started when I was in my 20s, and it turned into a major thing, but that was all cleared up. Guess what?
Come back.
It's coming back. It's coming back.
I'm not laughing
there's
at
nothing.
you.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not. And there is nothing in my personal life to point the finger at.
It's the larger.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, let me tell you something. What this reminds me of, okay? And folks, this is me, and we'll call this the Being Black in America segment, okay? I'll tie this to that because you understand that there are two syndromes that we have as black people in this country. We tend to have a high incidence of hypertension, and we have high blood pressure and
diabetes.
And a lot of these debilitating diseases are chronic, and it's basically post-traumatic slavery syndrome.
Right, exactly.
Okay? It's what we have been hit with for 400 years in this country, folks. And guess what? We've coped with that for 400 years. And even though we have these high incidents of all these diseases and these debilitating ills and whatever, we persevere and we keep on keeping on. Just like last week, we were pulling that story from the Philadelphia Trib, I believe, where we talked about, despite all the negative stories that you see, read, and hear, guess what, folks? Black men are actually succeeding in America. Now, we didn't dig into the story, but the headline was worth noting, and that's because over 400 years we've managed to keep on keeping on. We've managed to make a way where there is no way. Right. And it takes me back to, I've told this story once before, more than once, I believe, because when 9/11 hit, when those towers came down, the entire country got seriously traumatized, and most black people went about their lives like nothing happened. And you know why? Because we'd had 400 years of terroristic attacks on our people for 400 years. Right. So the latest terror attack that hit this country was just another day in the life of folks keeping on. Okay,
I hate to say that, but it's true.
But it's true. Okay, and I was at a forum at Columbia University, and I was actually a fill-in resource person, and so in part my contribution to the discussion, I said, I want you to keep in mind that where a lot of people are seriously hit, we understood that life is full of terror, and life has terroristic threats, and we've managed to deal with it over the years. So what, we got about 30 seconds left?
We got about a minute.
Okay, so
close to it anyhow.
To segue back to
post-Trump PATD.
Folks, this too shall pass, as we say. Take a page from being black in America.
Okay. Quickly now, Steve Stosny, another D.C. therapist, told CBC that he worked with a Trump administration official whose liberal-leaning wife and daughter were, quote, starting to hate him, end quote. The couple eventually decided to divorce, even though the husband left his post. Now, that's how bad this PTAD is.
Things are happening.
They're breaking up families. The wife quote, the wife couldn't take it anymore, Stoney said. It's as though when one spouse is at war with, what? It's though, there's a sentence here that doesn't make any sense.
Well, the household
typo or whatever, yeah.
The household is at war, thanks to the Canada White House.
I think,
all right, I think we're about out of time.
Yeah.
So, this has been Media Watch, folks. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait, Gillette.
And I'm Raymond Peterson with the noisy phone.